I have stuck it out all on my own. I endured when I was on treatments that were much less successful than what I'm on now. I'm so happy to wake up every day and not be depressed. I'm delighted. I have sat here in this house by myself for so many years, and I still did not want to live. I did not want to live.
Hey there, my name is Sean, and this is Suicide Noted. On this podcast, I talk with suicide attempt survivors so that we can hear their stories. Every year around the world, millions of people try to take their own lives, and we almost never talk about it. We certainly don't talk about it enough. And when we do talk about it, many of us, including me, we're not very good at it. So one of my goals with this podcast is to have more conversations and hopefully better conversations with attempt survivors. I'm going to keep trying. And I want to thank all the attempt survivors who have joined me here on the podcast since we launched now well over 2 years ago in July of 2020, and to everybody who listens. Thank you. If you are a suicide attempt survivor and you'd like to talk, please reach out. There's a few ways to do that. 1, email, hello@suicidenoted.com. 2, social media, Facebook or Twitter at Suicide Noted, and 3, a recorded message. You can find a link in the show notes on how to do that. And also in the show notes, you can find a couple of ways to help us out with a financial contribution as we try to share these stories with more and more people around the world to help them feel a little less shitty and a little less alone. And there is one final link to upcoming events, including a virtual open mic storytelling show called the Mental Health Happy Hour in early November. We would love to see you there, whether you want to tell a story or hear some stories. And finally, we are talking about suicide on this podcast, as the title suggests. Please take that into account before or as you listen. But I do hope you listen, because there is so much to learn. Today, I am talking with David. David lives in Texas, and he is a suicide attempt survivor. What's going on, David? How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine today. Thank you. I've just been looking forward to this.
I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're feeling hopefully a little better.
Oh, yeah.
David in Texas.
Yeah, I'm third generation native, and there are some people who are very, very proud of that. I'm not ashamed of it, but because I just, was born here. It has its pluses and its minuses.
Fair. Like anywhere, I guess.
Right.
So what compelled you, kind of a two-part question, what compelled you to at least look for something online or on a podcast platform or wherever that involved suicide? And then the second part to that is sort of then what compelled you to say, I'm going to reach out to this guy and maybe talk with him?
Quite frankly, for the many years after my attempt, I searched for all kinds of things online all throughout the years, just ways to connect with people, particularly on this topic. I sought it out as a kind of support for myself. I came across you on PBS World. There was a little blip on there about your podcast.
Wait, hang on. Hold up. PBS World I'm on? Wait, how did they... Do I have to give them permission? I don't even know how that works.
I don't know, but that's how I've discovered you.
Holy moly. Okay.
So it was mentioned on there, and so I looked you up online. I was very finally, the time that has passed has been about 16 years since I attempted suicide. And I'm happy to report to you and to everyone, I am now on the best treatment for depression that I have been on since 1991.
Wow. All right. Just to go back for a moment, a lot of people who might actually actively seek out a podcast with what we call the S word still wouldn't contact. And I know that you had said that you were curious, and I'm not looking for any validation here. I'm just genuinely curious what compels some people to then say, I actually want to share this stuff with a whole lot of people, more and more people. No, granted, you may never meet any of them, but people will still hear it. A lot of people wouldn't do that. So do you have any idea? I don't know if this is really an answerable question, but why you are in that minority of people who have said, yeah, no, I'm going to do this?
For me, it's a recognition and a validation of the attempt, which I think, as you pointed out many times, it's not a subject that people are willing to talk about.
Right.
And I have made it my mission.
Mm-hmm.
For example, when I went to a dentist, question of the medications that I was taking involved the 3 antidepressants that I take. And that conversation, led to discussion about the attempt. He expressed that, it was a selfish thing that people did by trying to commit suicide. And so I found an article online from a woman whose father committed suicide, and she said in her article that it was not a selfish thing. My reaction, if I hear of anyone, and I have heard of people committing suicide, my reaction is, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that anybody got to the point to where that seemed like the option.
Mm-hmm. Unlike your dentist.
Right. And so I use it as a tool to explain to people that a lot of these things that you hear people say frequently, people do what they have to deal with information. And that's one of the things that people do. It's like they can check it off in their brain and, say, well, that was a selfish thing, and they can go on. There's never a situation. I had a friend on Facebook who mentioned that someone that they knew committed suicide, but then they put the announcement on Facebook, that the guy passed away. And I was like, okay, he didn't pass away. He killed himself. I'm very particular about that. I don't like using euphemisms. When a family member dies, I say that they died. I don't say they passed away. It's okay. People say it, I know. Especially when it's suicide, though, it's so inappropriate to, say, oh, well, so-and-so passed away. Or the children in Uvalde, Texas, oh, they passed away. No, they didn't pass away. They were murdered.
Let's keep the talk real, sure. I'd imagine some people, I don't know for sure, they're trying to be delicate about it. Perhaps they're thinking about their word choice and they don't know what to say. But I want to point something out, and then I want to, if I can, move on to your attempt. There's a word that we have. It's a really cool word in English that your dentist might not understand, or certainly didn't use with you, and that you seem to use. That word is called empathy. And I appreciate you and others who are able to be aware of that and then actually employ it, if that's the right word, in their lives. And I would certainly hope, and this is not Sean's stage, but that others, including medical professionals, even if you're a dentist, would do that as well. But that's just Sean's little rant, and no one cares about me. We're here to talk about you. All right. So, Mr. David, in the Longhorn State, you have that one attempt, or is there more than one?
That was the only attempt.
And that was, if my math is correct, 2006?
2005 or 2006. I forgot when it was for such a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to go back and actually look at documents.
Where does it begin?
I think pertaining to my attempt, it related to 1994 when my partner died of AIDS. Meeting him in 1989 and sharing a life together that was really wonderful, and having the 5 years that we did, I reserved a part of myself to envision that I would continue if something happened to him. And it did happen, and it was horrible. I was heartbroken for a long time, but I began the heartbreaking process in the beginning, finding out, that he was already ill when we found out. It was a process of over years. So that is the background.
1989, you start your relationship with him.
Right.
1994, he we can use the word passes away now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
He passes away from AIDS. So we've got about a 11 or 12 year period of time here where I imagine it's probably very hard. Probably that's an understatement.
Right.
What happens after his death, and you're trying to get on with things as best one possibly can.
Right. And I did quite well for several years thinking, I really felt like, okay, I'm a decent person. I have the ability to, engage with other people, and I can eventually meet someone and have a very good experience, although I'm not going to put parameters on it to try to replace my dear Doyle. So I thought, well, with that limitation, realizing that, you shouldn't do that, I felt like I had a good chance to meet somebody. And I did, all the things that you would expect one to do who was interested in meeting someone else. I even began a gay singles group for Dallas. Anybody citywide. It was a nonprofit. I operated it by myself and with some help. It's like, let's all do something for each other. I did it for 2 years. I couldn't get guys to understand that in order for it to really be a successful group, we needed to remain steady with it. People would come for a couple of events and then they would not come anymore after that. So I had all this, people circulating through. So I probably, I met probably the most number of guys. I just realized that people we're not going to have the vision that I had for it. And so I didn't, make any big announcement or anything. I just quit sending invitations.
This was like 90s, still in the 90s?
Probably 96, 97.
And how does that experience, does that connect at all to, it's all connected, of course, it's your life. How does that connect to what eventually happens about 10 years later?
Well, because, that represents the extent to which I did go to make the opportunity available to meet someone.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I was not, a lot of people that came to that, they were not interested in bars, which is what, everyone does, but it represents the extent to which I went to, facilitate having somebody in my life. And I just envisioned having someone in my life. Even after that, I went on. It was like, okay, this is not working, next step, whatever.
Up until Doyle's death, as a kid, teenager, young adult, did you deal with, let's call them ideations at all? Is that something that's just like completely new when it starts to happen?
Never okay. Before that. I was able to tolerate a lot of conflict that happened within, starting as a teenager when I realized I was gay, because at first, for a long time, I didn't even realize, that I was gay. I dealt with it through, my Christian faith. I went for counseling, trying to understand, felt like do what was going to help me. And I felt like, for a long time, it was like, what I'm reading in the Bible is something that apparently God doesn't want, and I don't want it. So what's the problem?
Mm-hmm.
So I had gone through all that, came to a point, and it's like, okay, this is not something about me that's going to change. I'm going to make the best of it.
Mm-hmm.
And be happy. And that's what I did. So it really had not been an obsession. I never once thought of ending my life during all those years.
I don't know if this applies to everybody, but it probably does that, people don't wake up and just try to end their lives. There's usually a process. There's some time involved. They start to think about it. Something is sort of planted in their mind. So when for you does it start to be even a little inkling of a possibility?
I didn't have, the ideation for a whole long time. I pretty much was willing to deal with whatever I encountered in life. But I think that the day that I tried it, I said, about the whole thing, I was resolute. I was determined that it would stop that day.
What would stop?
That my life would stop, that I wasn't going any further. And the things that led to it, I think, were the background of, yes, losing my partner. I overcame that. I have shared this before on my blog and on my Facebook page, that I was also strongly affected by 9/11 in that I lost all my investments that I had. Everything, dwindled to zero. But I did have property, and I had property that, did not lose its value. That was a separate devastation on its own, something that I didn't, expect. And, I had invested the money that I got from my partner's death. It was like a double blow. It wasn't just the funds. It was symbolic too.
Mm-hmm. So that stuff is adding up, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what happens next? What you said that you were resolute, that you were determined. Do you remember? I know I'm asking you to remember a lot of stuff.
Right.
I mean, do you remember where there's a sort of switch? I know it may not be like a moment. It probably tends to evolve over some time or change over time, but like a switch of, all right, I'm out.
It's funny. I also have been a teacher in the past in public schools and in private schools. I worked in a psychiatric hospital for 3 years as a teacher.
Wow.
I was of the type of person that I was very devoted to students and their point of view and understanding and so forth. It was a lot better than being in the public school because we had resources of how to deal with students who were having difficulties or problems. And in the public school, you just have everybody lumped into your classroom of 30 or more. So it was a comfortable place to be. But I suppose, during this time that I was teaching, we had one of the doctors. Timberlawn Psychiatric Hospital was the premier psychiatric hospital, really making history in the beginning for psychiatric field. We had a doctor there who committed suicide. She took an entire month's supply of antidepressants, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I got the idea. Ironic. At the time that it happened, I was just devastated that we lost this doctor. I had just dealt with a lot of people's different realities to know that, people get in desperate circumstances for whatever reasons.
I think about this thing about us talking about suicide, give people ideas. I tend to think, no, if they did, I would be thinking twice about this podcast or some of the things we talk about. But you say something like that, and I'm like, okay, well.
There was so many years between that event and when I finally decided to do it. There were other things that happened that it seemed like things in life were just determined to bring me down. I just got tired of it. The other event that is a huge factor in what I did, there's a big interest in the gay community, guys, of working out in the gym. There's stuff that goes on in a gym that really only guys know. When I was with my partner, it was happening. Guys, would have their little visual pleasures that they would engage in the shower or whatever. And it's like between two people, usually it wasn't like something real public. One day at the gym, they approached me as I was leaving. It was a policeman, and they took me in the office, and they charged me with indecent exposure. They had an officer planted in the showers.
Jesus. Is there not anything better you can do with your time, boys? Come on, or gals.
I can see how some people would just like turn their head in disgust or whatever. But the thing is, it put something on my record that I could not get rid of. I was hoping to return to at least substitute teaching. When I went to apply and I talked with the personnel people, as soon as you apply for it and we run the background, as they said, it will automatically revoke your teaching certificate. That was a huge factor. I had tried to do other things, tried to get other jobs. I was working for myself, doing property renovation, but I was getting tired of it. But I got a lot more tired of it before it was over with because no one would hire me.
There are, I'm sure, other places that are more punitive than we are. Who we go after often, how we go after them, and then after even they might sort of pay their dues, pay their penance, if found guilty, we still punish them in so many ways. You make one mistake, we'll just ruin your life. Unless you're super rich, of course, then everything's different.
The police officer at the time tried to, express that it's really not that big of a deal. It's barely anything more than a traffic ticket. When I realized how much it was affecting my life, and it was a deferred adjudication, no finding of guilt was the eventual outcome after so many weeks or a couple of months. That was it. But yet, people still hammered me with it.
And if this happened in 1983, it's hard to find that stuff. Fast forward 20 years, it's not that hard to find that stuff. People can find things easily now. So all of that's part of it. And I think.
There was a fine and so forth, and it was deferred adjudicated. You move through it and you put it past you and you go on. Sure. And I worked for myself for a long time and was happy to. As things developed, then I kind of wished I had, could go back to teaching. In the city that I was living in, I lived in Fort Worth when I did this. I had tried to volunteer at a nursing home, just, to be doing something positive. I had grown up actually doing it. They wouldn't even have let me volunteer as a nursing home.
Right. I mean, it's amazing. I don't like our society very much, David, and I hate to be a complainer, but I really don't.
It's just all of these things just kept hammering on me. When I lived over in Fort Worth, I just had enough of trying everything I wanted to try to do and being blocked in every way. I, attempted quite a number of relationships. They just ended, and they weren't necessarily bad things, the way they ended, but it was just like either you're in love or they're in love, but you're not both in love, and it just doesn't happen.
Sure. Story of my life, David. So take us to, if you can, if you're okay with that, 2005, 2006, we're circling back. You said you were resolute. Can you talk about that day?
It's real interesting that even trying to go back to that day, I really couldn't remember what all happened exactly that day. But in intervening years, I'm a contributor on the Internet Movie Database website, do reviews of shows and things. The day that I had taken the overdose, I had posted a review that day. And I discovered it many years later. It's like, that's the first time I did. That's the first time I posted on it. And it's like, I looked at it and read it. And it's like, nothing that I said in what I wrote sounded like I wasn't going to be around. It was just a review of a movie.
Sure.
I thought, that is bizarre. So I don't know with medication, you can't always be 100% certain that it didn't have some effect. For the longest, I couldn't even remember what medicine that I was on at the time.
You were on a medicine to treat
Depression.
Is that the medicine you used to overdose?
Yes.
And so on that day, the same day you wrote the review, which you later remembered, when you took the medication, I mean, these are tricky questions here, so I'll try to be delicate about it.
Okay.
You know, people talk about wanting to die, and some people I talk to say, I want it out. Other times people will say, I was in a lot of pain. I wanted the pain to end. And if I could end that pain and not die, I would have chosen that. Does one apply to you, or is it a little bit of both, or neither?
I felt like I was boxed in and I just didn't see the way forward. I had some money, in my account. I wrote out a suicide note. I typed it out really nicely on my computer, printed it out for my two sisters, my mom. I wrote checks to my relatives for the amounts of money so that they would all get it from my account. I had it all ready and prepared and had it put out. I just had reached the limit. It's like, I'm not going any further. This is it. I'm done. So I took the full month supply of the antidepressant that I was on. I washed it down with a lot of rum and Diet Coke. I also had a medication for anxiety that I had taken for many years. I took about 10 of those and just kept drinking rum and Diet Coke. I felt really sure that this would end it.
So you'd use that word resolute when you're writing the note and when you're writing the checks. I could be way off here. It sounds like you were probably rather calm.
I was. I was very calm. I was like, this is all I'm going to do. I'm just not going to do anymore.
You were done. That's what you were done.
I still have the note, not because I didn't save it because, this is a treasure possession. But I came to after a few days. I was alone in my house. Nobody knew what I had done.
A few days?
I started coming to. I do know that, I made coffee, was drinking, and I splattered it all over the note and all over the checks as I came to. And then, eventually really, because at first it was just like a barely even becoming conscious, but yet I was. I don't really know what happened because I was by myself. And then, when I fully realized that it didn't work and it didn't happen, now what do I do?
Right. I would imagine that's a really, what's the word? When you realize that you didn't, you're alive.
I've been in counseling some this summer, and, she asked me, said, were you angry when you realized that it didn't work? And I said, not really. I said, I had every intention of it being effective, but I don't know. I knew that in my stupor, I had made coffee, which is something like I would do. I simply just, got up and started going forward again. I even started dating a guy that I met, and I told him about it. He said, well, you know what? I have been there before myself. I tried, or almost tried. We went along for a while, dated, but then I heard on the news one evening there was this Dallas psychiatrist who had been featured. There was a radio disc jockey who had been on the news feature item, had struggled with depression, and Dr. Hollander treated him. And so it sounded really good. And I started driving from Fort Worth over to North Dallas to Dr. Hollander's office, told them, what I had done. I said, I just need help. I just don't know what to do. Since I found myself still alive, I got myself busy to try to help myself.
And I know that because you're still here, because you didn't try again from what you shared.
No.
And you also said that your current treatment plan is the best you've ever been on, that however you define it, there have been some things that have happened that bring you here with me today, because otherwise you might not be here.
Right.
And your dog wouldn't have a father. Well, you didn't tell him that you're on a podcast, apparently. didn't tell him that we're recording. David's dog, he's on a podcast. We're recording David's dog.
That's Charlie. He's adorable.
Charlie, when you attempted, was that in the home that you're in now, or was that elsewhere?
It was elsewhere. I'm in my sixth and final home, I like to say.
Got it. One other question about you. So you wrote these checks out. So you were thinking ahead, taking care of some loose ends, so to speak. I'm curious. This doesn't come up much in the podcast. You brought it up, so I'm going to ask about it if that's okay. What do you put in a note? How do you put that together?
Yeah, I've gone back and read it because when I sold that house and moved where I am, it just was in a bunch of pile of papers that got brought over. So, I just wrote my honest feelings of, it's like, my family members they know how much I love them. So they must know how much pain that I was in to finally do this. I just, wrote from that point of view. It's one page. I still have it. I've looked at it again. It was a nice note.
Do you actually know where it is?
Yeah, I know where it is.
Wow.
Once I realized that I still had it, I thought, well, I guess I will hang on to that. I've already been through, the worst. Just through the worst, it came to that point. I didn't ever do anything in my life before that time or since that hasn't been, with purpose and intentional.
So you didn't go to the hospital, it sounds like. You woke up and made coffee and yeah.
No, I didn't.
I
didn't tell anybody for a long time, but I finally told my sister and my mother.
What was that conversation like?
Well, I don't remember the exact conversation, but, I know it was shocking to them. Within that conversation, was the promise that I would not try to do it again.
Did they ask you to promise that? Or
I promised them that I wouldn't.
And you stuck to it?
And I've stuck to it.
You think you'll be able to stick to it until the end of your days?
Yeah. If I've stuck through it now, I think I can stick to it. But I do realize, and I've gone for some counseling recently, and I do realize that there's really a narrow margin of what I can tolerate that doesn't soon get me back to feeling that way again. Since I've lived here in this house for 15 years, many years I lived here. 7 years ago, I had a massive heart attack. I have diabetes, the major depression, coronary artery disease. I didn't even expect to be living now.
How old are you?
I'm 65. When I made this move and came over here, I went to a church. A good friend that I grew up with she was secretary of the church. Our former youth director was assistant pastor. And I laid it all out for them. I said, I'm coming here. I said, I've attempted to kill myself and it didn't work. And I really need a place to go. So I began there and I'm still going there.
There's a church in Texas that embraces your sexuality?
They don't really, but there was nothing really to embrace except me.
Right. Right. Sure.
They know basically my story.
As a Christian, and I don't know too much about, frankly, religion, a little bit, I'm your classic Northern agnostic guy.
Okay.
Don't know if it's in the Bible, but as far as I know, suicide's a no-no.
Well, it's traditionally in the church, especially the Catholic Church, it's a no-no. I personally had a view of it. It's not really even discussed in the Bible. It's only something that is a conclusion drawn on the basis of one of the 10 commandments, do not kill. That's really all there is. And I personally never felt like that it was had anything to do with one's eternal destination.
You didn't think you'd be going to hell?
No. Oh, no. No, because I was, through everything that I've gone through, I've always been very confident in the faith that I have. And the pastor that I have been attending this church has said from the pulpit many times, it's like, if someone commits suicide, that does not indicate anything about their final destination.
Mhm.
So he would never advocate for that. But the Catholic Church particularly has advocated for it, but I'm not sure they still do.
But you believe in God, right? You wouldn't go to a church and embrace that faith if you didn't believe in God.
Right, right. I've been all over the map. I was raised going to church and believing, but I've gone all over the map. Sometimes like not believing. It's like, oh, this is all just, a myth. Why do we believe all this? And then I just kind of stayed with my, basic beliefs. I just haven't had any real reason not to.
Sure. How many people know that you are talking with me?
Well, I put it on Facebook today, so whoever my friend is,
Okay,
they know that I'm doing this today, including my sister. I just said, this guy is doing this to help people. I said, everybody, we all need each other's help, and I'm willing to do it to offer hope.
Well, you said when we first got on that it was a mission of yours.
Right. Finding about your podcast was a perfect thing for me.
Oh, great. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah.
I'm so glad that you decided to do it.
I just did it. It's right. So you want to offer hope to others. Do you have people in your life? You had mentioned your sister. You mentioned you go to church. Do you have people to talk to?
Well, I do and I don't. As for myself, I would have benefited from and enjoyed much closer communication with family, friends, and my people at my church. But it really hasn't ever developed so that I'm close to a lot of people at my church. A lot of people know about me and they know my story. I would have spent time with them over these past years to help with some of the loneliness. I have stuck it out all on my own.
Wow.
I think of it as I have endured.
Yeah.
I endured when I was on treatments that were much less successful than what I'm on now. I'm so happy to wake up every day and not be depressed. I'm delighted. I have sat here in this house by myself for so many years, and I still did not want to live.
Yeah.
I did not want to live.
I'd like it for people to understand that, because if somebody survives an attempt, it doesn't mean the next day they're good to go.
Right.
They just happened to survive.
It was a long, long journey.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that couldn't endure it, because the first medication that Dr. Hollner's office put me on was very harsh.
Mm-hmm.
It was very harsh. It was just kind of like trial and error for all these years.
Right. And you're battling a lot of it, it sounds like, alone, which is I don't have any proof of this. It's almost impossible to quantify or measure. I think that is the biggest killer.
I think it is too.
I think it's more than anything else that you can possibly. I don't even think it's that close. I really do. I really believe that. So I know you have Charlie, and I know you go to church, and I know you're on a treatment plan. What, if anything else, helps you feel okay?
Since I had the massive heart attack, I applied for disability 7 years ago. Based on my 3 disabilities of defining depression, the massive heart attack, the advanced coronary artery disease, diabetes, and I have more. But they awarded me with a disability on the first time, and everybody was telling me that you'll get turned down. I just laid it all out there, pretty much as I have for you. In just a few months' time, they awarded me the disability.
Good. You had said earlier that you gave an example of your dentist saying it was a selfish decision or selfish act. Just about everybody I've spoken to for this podcast, they deal with people saying things that, for lack of a better word, are just stupid, not kind. Is that something? And again, I know you haven't shared it with a lot of people, but even if the word depression comes up or other challenges come up, does that come up for you a lot? People saying things that you're like, what the fuck?
I'll tell you this, is open a person as I am. I have shared pretty much all of this on my Facebook page. It's hit or miss. I actually had somebody that I've known all my life made a statement to me that was so horrible, I couldn't even comprehend why. I made reference to the fact that I still had the suicide note. You know, I'm not somebody who, I certainly don't go online and brag about things, or it's not a place where I try to manipulate people or anything, but he just said to me, "You're nothing special." He said, "That's the lamest thing I've ever heard of, is someone hanging on to the suicide note for 15 years.
Anything else? Did he add anything else, or was that it?
That's basically what he said. You know, it's like,
Facebook friend or friend?
our families grew up in a small town east of here, knowing each other, and I've known the family all my life. You know, it went immediately from him being my friend to, "I'm blocking you."
Yeah.
There's no room for any grace for anybody to say something like that.
For sure.
There just isn't.
No coming back from that one, buddy. Feel free to say absolutely not here, but given what you just shared and this kind of comment that comes from a man, and that I don't know, have you ever shared the contents on Facebook, but you want to read the note?
I have it. I mean, I haven't read it in a long time, but I know where it is.
Yeah. Have you ever posted it for people to see, or is that?
Actually, that's what I had done that day, is I had posted a copy of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what he was reacting to. And so with his comment and everything, I deleted the whole thing. You know, if I'm going to open myself up to something this horrible, I just don't understand anybody who doesn't take what someone says, you know, kind of at face value, and they were honest in their expression. I just don't understand that.
There's a word for that. When people are able to do those things, the word is empathy. We talked about this already.
I know. I mean, I've worked in a profession that has a lot of empathy. I've expressed it, and I've been a recipient of a lot of empathy.
Maybe that's a part of it. When we get it, we give it. I don't know. Maybe that's a part of it. Are there any myths around suicide, suicidal ideation, sexuality? Any of the things, these sort of overlap in some ways, that you want to dispel or call bullshit on?
Sexuality involved in all this. Yeah, I tried for a very long time, you know, to make a connection with someone. You know, one of the reasons why, you know, I did the attempt was I'd never envisioned my life being alone.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't envision it that way. In enduring all this length of time, you know, I've reached a stage physically where even the sex drive is no longer a part of my life. It's just totally disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been for me a lot easier since then, the last several years, to just realize that the line has been drawn. And, you know, I'm not going any further with that.
So what's the myth around that, if anything?
I don't know.
Oh, it's interesting either way. I'm just curious. Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of people who are willing to explore the topic of attempted suicide. I mean, they're not even willing to say that someone killed themselves. So, you know, why would they be interested in exploring the topic?
Makes sense. Yeah. I can't tell you exactly my interest, but I have some ideas, my own life. Strange to me why people seem so averse to it, but I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know if I'll ever have answers. We do what we can do, right?
I think people are uncomfortable because of the feelings that they might have if they, you know, give it very much place.
I agree. I think you're being very kind.
Well,
I think that is a part of it. I think there's other things at play too, but that's just my take.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly not all one thing.
Yeah. Anything else, Mr. David in Texas, that you would like to add that I may not have asked or came up?
I just welcomed the opportunity to do this because I'm completely open. I have shared many things with my adoring public that, you know, other people would never, you know, I've gotten comments at various times, you know, from people that say, I'm just so glad you had the wherewithal to share that. I give people credit for those kindnesses and their grace. So be it from me to withhold my grace from anyone.
Now, you might not like what I'm about to say.
Okay.
I don't know much about religion, and I don't know much about Christianity. And there is a lot in the news, and some of it's probably very not accurate. Here's what I know about Christianity and Jesus. I'm pretty sure he'd be pretty cool with the way you were living your life. That's what I know.
Yeah.
I don't know your day-to-day routines. It doesn't matter. But the way in which you talk about being there for people or sharing and the grace. I can't quote anything, but I'm pretty sure his main thing was take care of people, especially the ones who are going through a tough time.
Right. Everything that pertains to humanity around you has a direct bearing between you and God. You know, the Old Testament religion, that was part of it. Don't bring me your gifts if you have got something against so-and-so. Don't do that. Go to your friend or your brother. In my long life, I am confident of this one thing, that I am doing, I believe, what Christianity wants me to do, believes and I should do. To my left and to my right, my neighbors, and if they need something, I try to help them. That's what it's about.
I think Doyle would be pretty proud of you, man. Don't know him, don't know you very well, but
right.
I'd have to believe he feels like David done good.
I think so. I hope so. And over all these many years, I have no, sense of consciousness of him continuing in existence, but it's like, I wish he could know. I hope he really knew how much I loved him. The other thing I was going to say is I have continued to delve into family history and ancestry. That has been a very fulfilling thing for me, both in my family and on my partner's side of the family. I was like, okay, I want to know about all the, families going back and so forth. So I've done all that, and that's been very fulfilling.
Very interesting. Yeah. Huge thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Glad we connected and glad you shared the way you did.
Yes. Thank you so much, Sean.
I hope your day with Charlie in Texas is a good one.
It is, as long as we're inside.
Same here, man. I'll tell you right now, I'm in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Now, people won't be hearing this in July. It'll be a little later. It is July 5th or 6th, and it is 99 degrees and rather humid. And this bald guy will probably be staying inside.
Right.
All right, sir. I'll connect with you soon. Thank you once again. And I hope you stay well.
All right. You too.
Right.
Thanks.
Take care, David. Bye-bye.
Bye.
As always, thanks so much for listening and all of your support, and special thanks to David in Texas. Thank you, David. If you are a suicide attempt survivor and you'd like to talk, please reach out. hello@suicidenoted.com, on Facebook or Twitter @suicidenoted. There are a few links in the show notes, and the first one is yet another way you can reach out to us and leave us a recorded message. There are also a couple of ways you can help us out financially, as well as a link to upcoming events. Thank you so much for your support, however you support us. We really do appreciate it. And that is all for episode number 130. Stay strong. Do the best you can. I'll talk to you soon.